Democrats in the Senate say they've reached an agreement to spend $3.5 trillion on domestic programs, but the plan still faces obstacles before it gets to President Biden's desk. Iranian nationals are facing charges for plotting to kidnap an American journalist from New York and bring her to Iran. And widespread speculation that ransomware gang REvil has been knocked offline. That's after websites run by the ransomware gang suddenly became unreachable on Tuesday. Tune in to Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meier. A quick update on the Lone Star State. While several Democrat senators joined their House members in Washington, D.C., the Senate still managed to pass the voting reform bill Tuesday. It passed along a party line vote of 18-4. 51 House Democrats staged a walkout Monday, protesting the voting overhaul bill. 8 senators have announced similar intentions, with a 9th tagging along. That's according to the Texas Tribune. Even so, the Senate was able to maintain a quorum with just 22 of its members. Abbott called a special session to pass the election overhaul bill. Republicans say it's necessary to prevent irregularities and fraud, but Democrats say it amounts to voter suppression. Abbott told Fox News the measure makes it easier to vote by adding more hours to early voting, but he says it also makes it harder to cheat using mail-in ballots. But if the Democrats don't return before the special session ends, the bills will likely fail. Abbott has vowed there will be consequences when the missing Democrats return, saying they will be arrested. He says the Democrats' decision is inflicting harm on the Texans who elected them. Texas isn't the only state pushing for voting reforms. 17 states so far have introduced nearly 30 new laws on voting regulation. And President Biden on Tuesday also commented on those laws, expressing disapproval.
This year alone, 17 states have enacted, not just proposed, but enacted, 28 new laws to make it harder for Americans to vote.
Many Republicans believe the new laws are to improve voter integrity, while Democrats believe they are suppressing voter rights. And while the debate around voting laws continues, Senate Democrats believe they have a deal on a $3.5 trillion budget package. That's in addition to the existing $600 billion bipartisan effort that focuses on infrastructure projects like roads, bridges, and broadband. After an hours-long meeting, Democrats on the Senate Budget Committee have agreed to increase funding on domestic programs.
The Budget Committee has come to an agreement. The budget resolution with instructions will be $3.5 trillion.
Schumer says that's in addition to the bipartisan bill on physical infrastructure. This money is for other Democrat spending priorities, including health care, education, and climate change. Democrats plan to pass the bill without any Republican support. But with an evenly divided Senate and a slim majority in the House, any dissent could be fatal to their plan. The most likely candidate to torpedo the bill is moderate Democrat Joe Manchin. He told reporters Tuesday, "I think everything should be paid for. We've put enough free money out." The Democrats' plan doesn't say where the money is coming from. Senator Bernie Sanders says wealthy people and corporations aren't paying enough taxes.
And what this legislation says, among many, many other things, that those days are gone. The wealthy and large corporations are going to start paying their fair share of taxes so that we can protect the working families of this country.
Manchin indicated he may support a smaller bill. Policy analyst David Ditch tells NTD that Democrats call their spending plan infrastructure to hide their radical left-wing agenda. And he said they spend far too much on things that would provide minimal benefit to the public. Ditch says it is an attempt to centralize as much power and control as possible in Washington, D.C. Democrats say they hope to pass the bill before the August recess. And now, Iranian nationals are facing charges after a kidnapping plot was thwarted. The plan was to kidnap an American journalist from New York and bring her to Iran. Federal authorities charged an Iranian intelligence officer and 3 alleged members of an Iranian intelligence network with plotting to kidnap an American journalist from New York. The New York journalist is not identified in the indictment, but is described as a Brooklyn resident, journalist, and human rights activist who drew attention to human rights abuses in Iran. The intelligence officer allegedly hired private investigators to watch the Brooklyn journalist and her household members. It included a live high-definition video feed of the journalist's home. The journalist is a U.S. citizen of Iranian origin, and so the 4 defendants aim to eventually get her to Iran, where her fate would be unknown. If convicted, the defendants could all face life in prison. According to the federal indictment, the kidnapping ploy was part of a broader effort to lure 3 people to Iran. U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss says among this country's most cherished freedoms is the right to speak one's mind without fear of government reprisal, adding a U.S. citizen living in the United States must be able to advocate for human rights without being targeted by foreign intelligence operatives. An acting U.S. Assistant Attorney General Mark Lesko says every person in the United States must be free from harassment, threats, and physical harm by foreign powers. Now, as for the intended target, an Iranian journalist and activist is speaking out about an alleged kidnapping plot against her.
The FBI came to my house like 8 months ago, and they were telling me that this house is not safe for you. And I was like, you must be kidding me, because I receive daily death threats. What's new? I'm here in America, they cannot do anything. And then when they showed me the photos of my private life with my husband, my stepchildren, my beautiful garden in Brooklyn, I was like, wow. So the government are that close to me? And then I took it serious. So they sent me to the safe house, and I'm being under FBI protection until now.
Iran denies it was involved in any kidnapping plot, calling the allegations baseless and ridiculous. This comes as the State Department briefed Congress that it's waiving sanctions on Iran's illegal oil trade. That's the same day the Department of Justice announced the kidnapping charges. The Free Beacon reports the goal of the waived sanctions lets Iran access its funds in Japan and South Korea. That's according to the memo sent to Congress. These funds are frozen under U.S. sanction, but with the waiver, the funds are free to flow without violating the law. A State Department spokesman says this gives Japan and Korea another 90 days to complete transactions with Iran. The spokesperson explained to the Free Beacon the Secretary of State previously signed a waiver to allow funds held in restricted Iranian accounts in Japan and Korea to be used to pay back Japanese and Korean companies that exported non-sanctioned items to Iran. And this comes as the U.S. and Iran are working to finalize the nuclear deal, which was axed under then-President Trump. Once the nuclear deal is in place, it will further lessen sanctions on Iran. There is expected pushback from congressional Republicans. And before we end, websites run by the ransomware gang REvil suddenly became unreachable on Tuesday, sparking widespread speculation that the group had been knocked offline. REvil has collected tens of millions of dollars in ransom payments in return for restoring computer systems it's hacked. In recent weeks, it claimed responsibility for a ransomware attack on U.S. IT firm Kaseya, affecting up to 1,500 businesses worldwide. It was unclear whether REvil's disappearance was a momentary fluke or whether the hackers had been removed from the internet by someone else. Vanishing acts are common in the ransomware world, where gangs tend to disappear and rebrand when they begin attracting too much heat. REvil has already been drawing top-level U.S. government attention, and pressure has been mounting on Washington to take more decisive action against REvil and similar groups. The U.S. has been hit by a string of high-profile hacks by ransom-seeking cybercriminals, including an intrusion into Colonial Pipeline, which disrupted gasoline deliveries across the East Coast. President Biden has hinted on Friday the U.S. could soon take more aggressive action on ransomware, saying it made sense to retaliate against the Russian servers used in those attacks. The White House declined to comment, while an attempt to reach REvil was unsuccessful. But what do you think? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meier, and see you soon.